UniPod, the podcast for all things management software.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of UniPod, the podcast for all things management software. And today we have Kunwar Gill. I'm really excited today because we're going to explore a whole new vertical. So, Kunwar, I'll give you the stage right away. If you can just introduce yourself and let us know a bit more about your background and how did you land in the management software world and then in this podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for having me. I think from my side, I come from an engineering and product background, and I've always been drawn to solving, real world problems, especially those that kind of live at the intersection of technology and people. So from my side of things, payments and POS kind of sit there perfectly. It makes sense. They're right at the intersection of technology and people. What really pulled me in to eventually start working on small business software and POS and payments was also empowering entrepreneurs. So most people who start a business, they don't really do it for spreadsheets or accounts receivables or any of that kind of thing, right? They're doing it for passion, for community. They're creating something of their own. And then part of that dream is to be rewarded with revenue, right? So you've got your dream, you've got your revenue, and what goes in the middle? POS and payments. Right? They are the perfect conduit to connect your dream and generate revenue. So I think our job is to make that dream achievable and give them tools that are fast, intuitive, innovative. And I think that's where I jumped into hospitality, retail, service-based businesses, and just empowering entrepreneurs.
Perfect. So interesting. So you saw payments as like the intersection between people and the businesses that you serve and really helping them grow. Is that your view on it?
If you look at an entrepreneur, they have a passion they want to share with the world, but part of that passion is also to be rewarded by revenue in some aspect, right? And so whether you're starting a restaurant or an e-commerce store, you can focus on the passion and you let the POS and the payments product focus on generating revenue for you. To me, it's the perfect meet in the middle for entrepreneurs.
Okay. Nice. So what you're saying is that this kind of work lets the entrepreneur like focus on his passion more because it solves like everything else and everything else works perfectly fine and smoothly. So he can really focus on what really matters to him.
Exactly. And if their passion is great and then that payments and POS product is great, the revenue will almost, generate itself.
Nice. So payments and POS is really strongly attached into the management software of your company, right? It's like a strong part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's part of the core. We're a small business platform. Most people come in, they want to, sign into the back office, create their product, sell their products. And then part of that is also accepting payments. That's where your dream becomes reality and revenue's coming into your business.
I'm asking that because, in different verticals that I spoke to, payments is a layer that came after a while. So for example, management software for, let's say, gyms, it can help the gym owner solve things like the calendar and the team members and the even the payroll and the, booking the yoga classes, stuff like that. And then the payments is like another layer. Here it sounds like in hospitality, it's like a must have and not a nice to have. Am I getting that right?
I would say so, right? Because if you're comparing about yoga and any service-based business, you're typically booking a service. For, let's say, for hospitality, you're ordering a meal, you're going out with your friends, and that payment happens right then and there. You're not looking for something in advance. It's not in the future. It's happening immediately right after your meal. So from my perspective, you've got the POS experience, and then the payments is right there, right next to it. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's really like an inherent part of the management software. Was there anything specific that made you decide to focus on the hospitality vertical, or was it like a spontaneous thing that happened and then you fell in love with it? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. There's two parts. I love food. I love going out. Love to go out to eat. And so does everyone else.
Who doesn't?
Everyone loves to eat. It's one of those things that every human does. And so that's exciting. And then the second part is it's a high pressure vertical, right? It's high pressure. It's dynamic. It's a compelling space for product innovation. If you look back in the last 1,000 years, right? That space hasn't really changed too much. You make food, you prepare food, you serve it, and you generate revenue. And then from our side, if we can add technology to that and innovate, now you have the opportunity for your customer to get their food faster. You have the staff member to get, more tips, and then you have the operator who can report on it easier and more
Hmm.
accurately, right? So combining all that, it just creates such a perfect blend for what my interests are. And then I feel like hospitality is such a reflection of the society we live in, and it's like the perfect blend for it's like a perfect mosaic, right? Everyone's got different preferences, different choices. And then as you start to talk to operators and entrepreneurs who are running these hospitality-based businesses, everyone's got a story. And part of that comes through when they're, preparing those meals and those dishes. So for me, I find it incredibly rewarding, and it's the perfect blend of food, but also the opportunity to innovate.
Wow. Okay, I love that. Actually, food is, it's really
Yeah,
something that connects people and a really cultural thing that brings people together. So that's really exciting. So, do you really like get the opportunity to speak to these hospitality entrepreneurs? It sounds like you have a relationship with them. Is it something that in your role or in your perspective, it's something important to do? Can you walk us through
it's
that a little bit?
so critical. Yeah, it's so critical to speak to these entrepreneurs and these hospitality merchants and retail merchants and service-based merchants as well. From our side of things, the company we work at, we have a mandate to speak to, X customers every day, every week. And that kind of, we've noticed that actually helps drive up NPS and gets merchants, being a bit more advocate of our product. And so from our side of things, if you look at our product team at EPOS now, we're speaking to merchants every day on a daily basis. I'm speaking to at least 2 or 3 merchants, seeing how they're doing, what's going on, what are the support cases, what feature requests they have, where they can, where they have trouble in running their business. So for us, it's incredibly critical to keep speaking to our merchants.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
it's
I think
something
just to add in,
mandatory?
yeah, for us, it's mandatory, right? And that's a change that I agree with. They're your customers. You should be speaking to them. But now by making it mandatory, getting your product managers out there and speaking to the customers every day, whether it's on a Zoom call or going on site, but it's just so rewarding. There's always something new that you will learn when you're on site or speaking to a merchant because there's just so many different ways to run a restaurant.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point because maybe product leaders sometimes, they trust their customer success team or the
Yep.
customer
Yep.
facing teams to give them this feedback and feed them with but being there firsthand is something different, right?
Yeah, I challenge anyone to go into a busy restaurant on, a Saturday night and see what the kitchen staff are going through, see what the front of house staff are going through, see what the operator's going through, and it's like, oh yeah, I could have definitely got this while sitting in my office. No, you have to either go on site or have a Zoom call where you talk to them and kind of see what's happening because it's such a challenging environment. There's so many users there that
And
are
how
touching your software.
how do they accept that the POS or the software, the hardware that they're using is like something in their day-to-day lives, and then they suddenly see you in their restaurant. It's like,
They
how
love
is
it.
that for them?
They love it. Yeah, I've never heard someone say, "Are you here?" It's I would say 100%. It's, "Oh, you're here. That's great." And check this out, and they'll show me some new use case, and whether it's on the software side or in their venue, if they've got new decor, a new menu item, there's always a new story to tell. Every time I go on site and visit a merchant. I've never had it where a merchant says, "Don't come here." Oh my gosh, yes, please come here. I'd love to share, my passion with you, which is their business and seeing it run successfully.
What's the funniest thing that happened to you when bumping into a restaurant and talking to the operator or the manager or something like that?
There's been a few. I'm trying to think of ones that I could share on maybe on this podcast.
Take your time.
We've had I think the one time I was there, everyone thinks of like a hospitality, restaurant or QSR business. You focus on the food. The one time I was there on site, I was talking to the operator, and what happens was one of the water pipes burst, and that was just, you don't think about that stuff when you're running your day to day or dealing with your day to day, and so that was kind of shocking because you saw a pipe burst, and then within minutes, yes, the staff are still focused on food preparation, or the wait staff are still focused on serving, and then the operator's having to jump in there and call a plumber and try to close the leak, and that was just wild, right? But anything can happen. It's a business, and if anything can go wrong, it'll go wrong. So that was probably an eye-opening experience for me, and that happened very early on in my career where I was like, okay, cool. So anything can happen here.
Yeah, it's like it's really something that you do not expect and cannot experience on a Zoom call.
Yeah,
It's something you'll
yeah,
never get when you're there.
no,
funny. And it sounds like the show must go on, right? It's a restaurant, it's a business. It doesn't matter what happened. Things need to, the payments needs to go through. People are starving and they want to get their food.
Exactly. Yeah. If you think about it, let's think about this use case. Someone's just eaten and your payment terminal goes down, right? Well, what are they going to do? They've already eaten. They're done. They want to pay you. Maybe they don't have cash, or maybe they do. I don't know. But there's no real incentive for them to stay. They've kind of done their job, right? And so this is why it's so critical to have, strong PLS uptime, strong payments uptime, because it creates a great environment. And once the diner's done eating, they might leave, right? They don't have to stick around, right? They're not locked into a subscription. They're not locked into like a 30-day trial. They're like, the meal's done. I'm ready to pay. If you're not ready to accept my payment, I'm just going to walk out.
Yeah.
Right? There's only so
Yeah.
much leeway you're given.
That never happened to me, though. I was always able to pay at a restaurant. Yeah, but sometimes how does it work, like with cash or credit card, or like how is everything combined together in one software and tracking everything, reporting the reconciliation? How's the payment process there?
Yeah, I think that's where most
And
transactions.
also, a lot of people are involved in the payments. So you have the waiter maybe charging them, and then the operators need to see it in the back office, right? So
Yeah, so that's the great thing with integrated payments, right? Is if you were to pay by credit card and it goes through your payment terminal and it integrates directly into your POS, all of that can kind of come through in your back office, and it's totally accounted for, right? And then from that side, it goes to your payment processor, and they can eventually pay out to the merchant, and they'll take their cut and whatnot. So from a credit card perspective and debit card perspective, having it digital has been almost like a blessing for these operators because it's so seamless. It goes right from the diner, the shopper, the eater, directly into the owner's operator's pockets, almost instantly. And then cash, yeah, cash is still sometimes a challenge, but most places have processes in place where once you've paid cash, you go through, you put it into your float, and then you tally it up at the end of the night, put it into an envelope, and then take it down to the bank or pay it out. Cash is still maybe a little bit antiquated, I guess, and out of date, but still, it still works. And I think most people are moving towards digital transactions.
And with the cash, everything is still connected in the software for the operators then to see it.
Yeah, that's a great shout. So even on the POS and payment terminal, you can still register it as a cash transaction, and then you input how much cash you get. It'll tell you how much change to divvy out, and then if there's anything extra, like a tip, you can record that, and then you know that you're owed that much at the end of the night.
Yeah, because tip needs to be registered differently, right? And I guess in
depending on
different
each region, it's very different depending on each region.
The tax is different.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it sounds like EPOS Now is catering globally, right? It doesn't matter the region or.
Yeah,
maybe
we
it's
have
interesting
our core markets of like the UK, the US, Spain, Canada, Australia, and Mexico. And then if anyone wants to purchase EPOS Now in the other markets, they typically can. But our core markets are definitely those 6.
Do you get like different feature requests, or do you see like different eating habits from different regions?
Oh my gosh, every day. Yeah. I guess like in the US, there's a bigger emphasis on tips, right? And tips is such a critical part of the hospitality industry. And then you've got feature requests like tip pooling, where you pool the tips amongst the front of house staff and the back of house staff, and each person gets a percentage depending on sales. And then, up until very recently, it wasn't really a thing in the UK where you wanted to track tips and kind of do all that. Now, last year they passed legislation to track tips and trunk, and so now you're slowly starting to see it pick up over there as well. So very different regions, different eating habits. It's fun.
And are you able to you are like responsible or exposed to all these different regions and eating habits? Because that sounds kind of fun actually, to get to know all these different cultures through their food. Yeah.
It is, yeah, and it's always fun, getting on a call and speaking to someone in Spain. Maybe you have to bring on a translator just to help understand, but their concerns are very valid. They might not be applicable, in the U.S. or in Canada, but they still have feature requests and concerns that you want to share with. So it's fun. I'm not going on site to Spanish restaurants necessarily. That's something I still have to do digitally. But yeah, speaking to Spanish merchants versus an Australian merchant versus an American merchant, all different use cases and requests.
But it sounds interesting. It sounds fun, especially like if you have this passion for food.
Yeah, food and helping small business people. Like it's awesome.
I have another question. I'm gonna push it in here. Like, I was thinking, why is the hospitality vertical, or the hospitality businesses still using hardware and not like software like all the other businesses? It's really rare, I think, to find restaurants that are not using this like machine, or am I wrong?
Are you talking about like the POS system?
No, so not only
Oh,
the
like the
small
handheld ones? Yeah, the handheld the
device.
tablets. Yeah,
Yeah, like the big screens. Do you need the
the
whole
kiosks.
screen to use?
The kiosk. Yeah, the kiosk.
Yeah.
Like the self-ordering ones. Is that what you mean? The ones where you order by yourself?
Hmm. Okay, so that's what it's for. And do you support that? Do you support these kinds of machines? And
Yeah, yeah. So we've got a point of sale that sits at the register. We've got handheld terminals where you can take your terminal table side and take payments and take the order. And then
hmm
we integrate with partners who have a full-on kiosk product where, yeah, I think it's a massive screen and you can go in there and like you see at, other chain restaurants, some of the bigger chain restaurants where it's self-ordering, you order by yourself and then it prints out a ticket and then your food will come.
But it's still not like a software that you just download to the tablet. The restaurant doesn't purchase a tablet. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, but does the restaurant purchase a tablet and then download your software, or do they need like the whole thing?
They can do both. They can do both. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I see your question. Yeah. So they can, if you wanted to buy, let's say, an iPad or an Android tablet and download our software only, you could totally do that. And then we also recommend just buying our hardware because it's kind of made for restaurants and it serves a purpose. The iPad and your Android tablets are typically like consumer grade electronics, and then the hardware we sell is more rugged, a little bit more tough and resilient to damages and it's rated for that environment. High temperatures, chaos, you can drop it, it won't break. So we also do sell the hardware that has our software on it, and then it's lockdown hardware. So you can't put Instagram on that tablet or whatnot. It's
Mm.
ours, but it's specifically designed to run your business.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it's hospitality is the only vertical where I still see hardware being sold. But I think that what you said really answers that thought because it needs to be very strong and like also the
Resilient.
probably yeah, and resilient because not only the business owner is using it, it's like also the waiters and maybe the consumers themselves, right? It's like a device that
Yeah,
funds between a lot of hands.
I challenge anyone to go to a bar and check out the POS system behind the bar because there's sticky alcohol and beer. So it's not something where you'd want to put an iPad. It's definitely something where you want a lockdown device that's sealed properly and kind of go in there and the floor
Okay.
will be sticky and and all that and it's hot sometimes in the kitchen. I don't
Yeah.
think an iPad would probably be the best situation there.
Okay. Okay. Got the point. So, Kunwar, in your experience, what are the unique challenges of developing management software for the hospitality sector? Maybe we touched upon it, already in the call, but if you can like sum up or
Yeah, I think
like,
if you go back to that hospitality industry, it's all about speed and simplicity, right? If you look at like your operators, they don't have time to learn complex workflows. They don't have time to wait for a slow system during a dinner rush, right? It's just every second counts. And then so, if you look at that persona, you're building for someone who's on their feet, walking, moving, they're juggling 10 things at once. It's noisy, it's chaotic. There's people running around, there's probably people bumping into you. So things like performance, offline capability, intuitive design. Those are almost they're almost non-negotiable in that sense.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
one thing nobody really realizes until they get into the space is the person using your software isn't necessarily the one paying for it, right? And so what I mean by that is when you come in as a guest in a diner, it's the front of house staff, the wait staff that come, and sometimes most likely they're the ones using the software. And then it goes to the back of house kitchen staff who they have a kitchen display and orders are coming through the printer. So that's, your software and hardware. But none of those are paying for it, right? They're just
Yeah.
employees that work there. And then your operators, sometimes they're hired on as full-time employees, or they might be, it's a small business. They might be the founder and the entrepreneur. So they're typically the ones paying for it. And then you've got suppliers who are also bringing in supplies to your restaurant, right? So you've got what, one, two, three, four. It's almost like a five-sided marketplace, but the only person paying for it is the operator.
Wow.
So the person using your software isn't necessarily paying for it, but they can advocate for your software, right? So if you have a really good POS system and a really good payment system, they can go to the operator and say, hey, this is a really great system. I love it. Or if they go get a new job, they can go to that other restaurant business and say, hey, you should swap out your system and try to get, EPOS Now because it's really
They
resilient.
can
It
be your
works.
ambassador.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what you should be going for, right? Because then they can start to influence the operators.
Yeah, that's a good challenge. I mean, how do you balance between serving the users that are using your software and serving the operator or the decision maker, let's call them?
Yeah. It's tough, but it's also not that tough because typically the operators they want they're typically looking at revenue and making things as easy as possible. And then from the front of house staff and the back of house staff, they also want things as easy as possible. And also they want transparency and clarity to make sure they're getting all the transactions in, all the tips are coming through, and they're getting paid out fairly. So both parties want something that's transparent and easy to use. And so generally from that side of things, it's pretty easy to just, once you build something for the operator, it'll typically work really well for the front of house staff as well.
Okay, so they are aligned with their motivations, but still sometimes they have like different requests. The operator will want to have a dashboard and see the revenue and understand what's going on and have a clear view on everything. But then they need a specific feature for the tips, and as a product owner, you really need to like build a roadmap that is for everybody or for who actually.
Yeah. So in that case, you have to prioritize, right? And are you prioritizing the customer who's paying for it? In that case, it's the operator and the entrepreneur. Or are you going to prioritize the front of house staff member? There's typically an exercise, and typically you're going to try to advocate for the operator and entrepreneur because they're paying for the software, they're paying for small business software to help make their life easier. And in the long run, if they're successful, your business is going to be successful as well. So your business being the POS and the payment space. So you'll try to maybe a slight bias that way, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because it's not the first time I hear that view that at the end of the day, the operators and the business owners, the entrepreneurs, they're the ones that need to be satisfied, and these are your customers. So I think it's a good point to clarify that, your users can be vocal, they can be asking a lot of things, they can really need something today, but you really need to keep that in mind when you build the roadmap.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you have to look at all those users of your system: the front of house, back of house, suppliers, the customers, as in like the diners and the eaters, I call them, and then the operators who typically pay the bills.
It's okay. We're eaters. I like that definition.
Yep.
And in your opinion, like, what's the difference between good management software or average management software and excellent, outstanding, amazing management software?
I think from my side of things, that's a great question. I think good software kind of just gets the job done, right? Typically, the owner operator is like, cool, it works. Doesn't really work great, but it works. It's got let's say 98% uptime, and that's generally a good experience. I think you're excellent to wow / industry leading. I think that those kind of systems are almost anticipate the job before the owner or the operator even know it. So in our case, offering the insights or potentially using automation for frictional experiences, things that the operator or the owner is not really thinking about, to the point where, let's say you're in the POS, you're in the back office in the cloud, and you want to know what your best selling products are. So it'll pull up a report. Here's your best selling products. Do you want me to reorder them? And then it's a one-click reorder, right? Or hey, these are your worst selling products. Do you want to offer a promotion for them to see if we can get more sales going? Or if not, let's not sell them anymore. Let's remove them from the menu. So things like that, where you're almost one step ahead of the owner operator, and you're starting to make things frictionless. That's I think the difference between good and then industry leading.
Wow, interesting. Like anticipating what's going to happen. That's like magic. And even if a lot of people would think and have these boards and try to understand. It's not like automatically giving you this material to work with and these tips and suggestions and it's
Yeah,
if you do that manually, it's never going to happen.
exactly. I think if you look at it, a large portion of small businesses are started by, a first-time founder or first-time entrepreneur. It's the first time going through this journey. And so, we have the potential to say, hey, we've got, this formula and this framework that we use, and first you do this and then you do that. And once you kind of, have your POS working and your payments working, now we can start to tackle suppliers and inventory and employee retention and scheduling and just kind of helping them along that process, but making it really frictionless and embedding it directly into the platform. Then there's no reason to fail. The platform will help you succeed as long as you're focused on your passion.
Yep. And I think it loops back to what you said about getting to know the people, because you really escort them in a way and you really like help them and follow them, and all this can really come only when you really know them and been there and saw their business and saw what they're doing and saw the pipe blowing and that everything needs to
Exactly.
continue and go on, right? Nice. I like that one. And what is the one blind spot that other management software players, product owners, entrepreneurs don't pay attention to, and they should definitely start tomorrow morning, in your opinion?
I think for the hospitality industry, from my perspective, one of the things I didn't know about it before, all those years ago before I got into it, was the high turnover of staff. So if you think about a restaurant, you look at the front of house staff and the back of house staff. Yeah, there's maybe few employees that have been there a while, but generally it's a very like seasonal. Sometimes it's seasonal depending on if you're a summer based business and you're hiring students for the summer. But generally there's a ton of turnover in those businesses in terms of your wait staff and your chefs, and they're always moving around, hopping around. Sometimes they don't show up to work, for a few for a few weeks, and then so you're constantly onboarding new employees, and that was definitely a big eye opener for me. Just seeing how, every now and then they'd have to bring on a new person to manage the front tail, or because someone's away on holiday or someone's no longer with the business. So from my side, I think onboarding was definitely a big thing that I think hospitality providers have to kind of focus on, right? Because
And the
now you have to train a
onboarding
new
of a
employee.
new
Exactly.
and the
The onboarding of
onboarding
a new
and the
employee.
training
Yeah.
is done through the management software.
Yeah, exactly. So, you can kind of come in there, start to play around with it, run some transactions, test transactions, run them through, because you want to essentially get them ready for, showtime,
Okay,
which is
okay, okay,
when
okay.
the dinner rush, the lunch rush, where people are hungry, they're probably not in the best mood, right, when they're hungry, and then you just want to make sure that this person knows all the things, all the right buttons to press, to kind of go through that process. And then also in the kitchen, when orders are coming through, they know what the process is now. Okay, the order comes through on the kitchen display. They know what to tap. They know that to prepare. Just little things like that. Onboarding new employees was something I learned definitely. And I think that's where people should definitely try to be in the venue when you're onboarding new employees, and you'll learn a ton, because it is very jarring.
So, so what you're saying is that it needs to be super intuitive for first-time users because of the frequency of changing stuff.
Yeah, for the frequency of changing staff, and for the owners and operators, right? Where they can just say, hey, come in here, play around with the system. Here's the menu. Here's the POS. Here's the payments. Press this button. It triggers the payment terminal. You press this button. It goes to the kitchen. Okay, let's run through 5 transactions. I come in. I want a cheeseburger with fries. How do you enter that into the system? Cool. All right. Do that for all the different combinations of orders a restaurant can have. And then also when you're, clocking out at the end of the day, at the end of your shift, how do you clock out? How do you take your report, your shift report? How do you report on tips? How do you just all those little things? You have to go through it a few times before you become really proficient, as with most things. But I think your question was, what's the blind spot? I think that's a blind spot a lot of people miss.
Yeah, yeah. It's a blind spot, and it's also unique to the hospitality sector because, like you said, it's something that happens specifically in this vertical, and you get first-time users again and again, and it's almost like they test your software. It's almost like you
They
need to
test your
delete
system,
all the information. Yeah, they test your system once again, and in order to like get into their brains, you kind of need to delete everything you have in your mind and what you're used to, and really experience it from their point of view. It's quite a challenge.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say every day on our system, someone is using it for the first time. just given the global reach. And so, and we'll hear about it. We'll hear about it from people if they can, if they
But
can't get it
definitely.
intuitively. We'll definitely hear about it. Our customers let us know.
How kind of them?
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah.
We should be
Yeah.
helping them.
Yeah, I'm joking. So payments are, we touched a little bit about it, but they're really like an integral part of your software. So how do you see the relationship between the two? How does it come together?
I would say they're inseparable, right? I think going back to that analogy of, you're an entrepreneur, you have a dream, you have a passion, you want to share it with the world. The best way to do that is, get your POS system, get your payment system, and start, selling your passion, whatever it is, and then that generates your revenue, right? So from my perspective, they're inseparable. A POS is where the order is placed, but your payments piece, your payments terminal, your payments integration, that's where revenue is generated. That's where it becomes real, right? Up until
Hmm.
that point, everything you've done hasn't really generated revenue until that payment goes through. And that's that final step, right? So for me, it's a seamless integration. It's part of the process.
Does it make sense that if, someone has a passion towards building a new management software, does it make sense to start with management software that has no payments and then integrate payments for the hospitality sector? Or is that like a waste of time, in your opinion?
I think it's a reasonable way to look at it. I think, if you're going to be building software or if you're going to be building management software, first you want to focus on the pain points that, that merchant has or that customer base has. And, most of the time payments is part of that pain point, right? Maybe the systems they use are antiquated, they're out of date, they're not, they don't have certain features, but then payments is kind of in there as well. Sometimes they'll say, oh no, my payouts take too long, or this terminal isn't reliable, or I can't accept a certain type of currency or a credit card. So for me, POS and payments go hand in hand. They're almost inseparable.
I'm asking because payments can be sometimes quite intimidating. Um, because there's a lot of regulation and stuff and words terminology that you need to learn. Sometimes if you just want to build a software, it's like the last thing you want to touch.
That's true. When I joined the POS space and product, I definitely felt intimidated by payments, but there's so many payment processors and payment partners out there. They really do make it easier, and I feel like it's never been an easier time now to integrate payments into your product suite. There's so many brands and partners and each region has their own favorites. So I think it's gotten easier. It's probably not what it was 10 years ago. I think there's a ton of documentation now, a ton of videos, and most of these payment processing engines and payment partners, they're almost seamlessly onboarded onto your platform. So I think it's a lot easier now.
That's a good tip. And what trends do you see in the management software world?
Ooh, trends. I have, yeah. So I think I would say there's probably three major trends. There's let's say vertical integration, right? So
Vertical what?
vertical integration. So whether it's like, hospitality based software, or hotel systems have something called property management software, and your food truck, it's probably leveraging like Bluetooth and 4G connectivity. So just diving deeper into, each of the verticals and going deeper. So you've got hospitality, but then within hospitality, you can have hotels, food trucks, quick service restaurants, fine dining restaurants. And then under retail, you can have, a whole slew of different, again, sub verticals. So I would say, first one is definitely more vertical integration. You're starting to see, I think you mentioned it, there's gym software now, and there's a snowboard shop software, and there's a bar software, right? So just getting deeper into the verticals, that's definitely what's happening. I see that
Why
happening
do
in
you think?
every,
Why? Why?
because there's no one size fits all, right? Every industry, every sub vertical is so different. What you build for, let's say a bike shop probably doesn't apply to a fine dining restaurant, right? Actually, I'll tell you, it doesn't apply to a fine dining restaurant. Oh, so as you start to go from like a yoga studio to even like a strength gym to a golf club to a restaurant, everything is so different. There's just so many little minor variances in workflows that eventually all add up to justify the existence of a totally different software suite.
Yeah, it's definitely a trend that I'm seeing, and that focusing like on a specific vertical really gives you the freedom to explore the nitty gritty stuff and like how you can serve them in the best way. And it sounds like that it's becoming even a challenge to be a software that is catering to the whole restaurant or hospitality world, because like you started saying, like fine dining needs a little bit different stuff. And then like fast food restaurants probably need like a little bit different. And it's like, it becomes like a whole different product for each sub vertical.
Yeah. So that would be my number one. Like first there's vertical integration, which we've just talked about. Then, the next trend I see is obviously, and it's a big buzzword that everyone talks about, but it's more AI driven insights and automation, right? From menu pricing to supplier ordering to shift scheduling for a hospitality business. There's so many moving parts, and just starting to have that be a bit more seamless. You can start to leverage AI and its insights. I would say that's number two. And the third one, you're finally starting to see B2B software be as user friendly as consumer facing products, right? So, your POS systems now seem almost as intuitive as your iPad and another consumer based system. So I think design on the B2B space now over the last 10 years has gotten so much better, where, before it was so hard to open up an e-commerce website, and now it's so easy to run your business on by a website. Before it was so hard to take your POS terminal and configure it to the way you want. Now it's super easy. You can just do it digitally and on the web, and it happens seamlessly. Super complicated to take payments 10, 20 years ago. Now it's almost pretty seamless. You just tap, you can tap your phone, tap your card, or even your watch, and it's so seamless. So I think, going back to your 3 points, I think vertical integration, more AI driven insights and automation, and then you'll see more of a push, I think, a continued push on experience and design.
Wow, the third point is super interesting because really, like in my previous episode, someone talked about like how the marketing stuff, the marketing department is starting to learn from direct to consumer businesses and apply the methods from there in marketing, like in marketing from to consumers, marketing to businesses. And now you're saying the same thing, but from a product perspective and the design perspective. It's also like taking the trends and the ease and the seamlessness and the frictionlessness from direct to consumer into B2B software. And I think that's a super important perspective to highlight because it's really going there, and businesses are really shifting and learning from, like, it's almost like they're always like one step ahead. All the B2C and D2C businesses are always one step ahead. And it's really something to, I think, listen to and always open your eyes and ears towards, because they do that pretty well.
Yep.
They know how to catch people and how to understand the user experience really well. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think
getting
no, you're
excited.
right. Like if you think about ordering, 10 to 15 years ago, right? We didn't have kiosks where you could order stuff, or you didn't have tableside ordering where somebody would come bring a tablet or a handheld terminal, and we definitely didn't have online ordering where you could order on your phone, right? So all that stuff is now just getting easier and easier, and eventually that consumer centric design is slowly coming into the B2B space, which is great for the customers.
Cool. Do you have a hard stop at 9? I don't like in 5
I'm
minutes.
okay. I'm
Okay.
all right. Yep, I'm okay.
Yeah. So that's so let's finish the questions, and I'll delete this part later. What's the most surprising requests you got from a user, whether that's an operator or diner? Do you get requests from diners, or is it like too far away?
No, we do. We have like online ordering integrations and our own online ordering products as well. So we definitely do get requests from diners. Nothing out of the norm. Typically, this is the standard stuff. I want a receipt, or I want to be able to track my orders better or in an improved way. I would say a request I get, not often, but every now and then I'll get it. And we still haven't done this, but not a lot, but a few operators definitely come up with and request, hey, can I get Spotify working on my POS system, right? Because typically, if you think of like a coffee shop or a bar, they've got the music going on, right? And it's typically plugged in through the auxiliary cord or through Bluetooth to some sort of control unit, and it goes through all the speakers. And every now and then, like every 3 months or so, I'll get an operator asking, hey, I'd love to control Spotify through my POS system. And it's a reasonable request, but it's also almost like an edge case where it's nice, but also that's business software. And if you look at a restaurant, every time someone comes into their shift, every few hours, somebody else plugs in their phone to control the music, right? So there's all these little edge cases where you have to think about, okay, well, someone's going to sign in to Spotify, and then you have to sign them out and sign someone else in. But also our hardware is locked in, right? That's part of like the compliance and the regulations there, right? So that you can't commit fraud and all those things. It's an edge case. It comes up, every few months. But that's one I'd say it's not a strange request, but it's a request that we haven't definitely built out. But I can see the case for it. But you also have to understand you're building B2B hardware, and
Yeah.
you can't just load up Spotify and third-party apps just like that. So and then you'd have to build out an integration to, while you're taking an order, you can also control the music. It's kind of niche.
Yeah, it's funny, but it's actually, yeah, it's reasonable. I think that the music is really part of the ambience and vibe that the restaurant is giving you. So I can
Yeah,
definitely see how that.
yeah,
I would never think of something like that.
yeah. So typically, if someone does ask it, what I'll say is, cool, just get a tablet, and if you want to use a tablet to do that, that's a consumer-facing product, and you're not really taking payments on it and whatnot. By all means, do it there. And what you're using as like a ledger and your accounting system and your POS. Maybe let's not do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that really makes sense. I would completely get that. So, if you had double the budget tomorrow, what's the first thing you would do?
Uh, this might be a cliche answer, but we've been
Go for
talking
it.
about this on our leadership teams as well, and I think it really just comes down to like doubling down on AI and data quality. From my perspective, AI is not just like a fancy feature, but it's now like a foundation of whatever you do, whatever any tech company does, right? And I see AI as like the great equalizer, right? It's no longer about, who has the most engineers or who has the biggest budget. It really just comes down to, okay, which teams are using AI to the best of their ability. And it comes down to will now, right? Because now you can run multiple agents. If you empower every engineer and every designer and every product manager with AI tools to help just do their job a bit more efficient, things just get faster, right? It just makes life a little bit easier. So from my perspective, it's, how can you give everybody internally in your organization access to AI? And then how can they build things to help trickle over to the customer the right way, right? And so I think with the right AI investment, you can give every operator, every staff member some benefits. You can give them insights, automation, things that previously were reserved for like bigger chains and bigger enterprises because they have bigger data, right? Your Starbucks, your McDonald's, they have bigger data sets, more high priced engineers, people actually look at that data. And now if you can just commoditize that and make it available for the general, small business person, that'd be huge.
Amazing. Yeah, interesting. And, AI is there a lot, but really putting that into action is still challenging, and businesses still need to learn and explore how to do it. So I think that as long as your focus is there and your thought is there, then it's definitely going to be okay. And what advice would you give to our management software listeners that are starting their way or in their like what's your tip?
I would say, and maybe another cliche response, but for anyone starting up a startup, just start by listening. Go to that hospitality merchant, go to that quick serve restaurant or that full service restaurant, and start speaking to the operators, the staff. Maybe don't be a nuisance, but just have conversations, and then actually just sit down and observe what happens there. Right? How spend some time there in the trenches with everyone behind the counter, the operators, just ask them questions. I think a lot of people, they just start building something and they'll say, oh, this is a problem to solve and we'll build it. And you kind of saw this with COVID, right? Everyone was building like a QR code scanner and, an online ordering tool, which was great. It really helped push things forward. But you've seen so many of these companies now just kind of fail, right? Because they weren't really providing enough value to the merchants where it justified having to pay an extra subscription, right? So I would say start by listening, start really focusing on what problems they're having, whether it's the operators, the staff, the back of house. Because again, it's a 5-sided, 6-sided marketplace. You've got so many users and inputs. They all have problems. You just have to sit down and listen to them. And if we're gonna, specifically dive into like software and payments, you're handling someone's money, right? So you have to be a bit more mindful there. Uptime, transparency, even support, right? If someone has an issue, they can't wait, you know, 60 minutes for you to pick up the phone. They'll call you right away and you need to have a resolution ready to go. So from my side of things, it's always listen to your merchants or your users, whether it's, front of house staff, back of house, operators or suppliers.
Nice. You said it's a cliche, but I think it's always something that, you really need to go back to because as a founder or entrepreneur, you have this dream, you have this passion, you want it to happen, but then you sometimes like forget who this is for and why you are doing that and who you are really serving. I think that's a great point to emphasize always.